Okay, guys, we're covering week 9 and 10 today. So, we're going to talk about what international transportation is first. So, super simple stuff, guys. International transport is a transport of goods between two countries. There are many forms of international transport that you can go with, that you can choose from. There's sea, air, road, and rail. Okay, so transportation by sea. Transportation by sea is it allows you to ship large volumes with lesser cost than the other three modes. Shipping containers could also be used when transporting goods by land. However, international transportation could be delayed due to the slow pace, weather shifts, and inflexible routes and schedules. Okay, so um, when I'm telling you guys all this stuff, I'm telling you all this based off of experience as well. Because when I was trading commodities, I was in charge of making sure one oil ship comes in every month and we fill it up with 25 to 50 million pounds of oil, which however much we were sending at the time. On top of that, I was handling 54 rail cars that were owned by our company going in and out of the States, the US, um, from here to the US, from Canada to US, and all around Canada as well. Um, and then I had roughly around 40 trucks a day coming in and out, picking up oil. So all this oil was leaving our plant in so many different ways. We had trucks, like oil tankers. We had rail tankers, like rail oil tankers, and we had ships that would come in to pick up our oil. So I can tell you, a lot of this was based off of experience. So um, the issues that came up with the vessels was first off, it is uh, the issues that we found were vessels, if they were going to a certain destination and your parcel wasn't the main parcel, they'd be going to different destinations first to pick up different stuff to bring it over to back to the home country. So that would eat up time in delivery. On top of that, the amount of paperwork that's involved with the vessels is extremely long. And like they said here, inflexible routes and schedules sometimes what we've seen was the reason why the economy took such a big hit, the commodities industry took such a big hit, was because China bought a bunch of oil, and what ended up happening was their port went on strike. So when their port went on strike, they ended up having all these ships ended up having to come back to their home country with all this oil because China couldn't accept it anymore because the ports went on strike. So a lot of these little things happen which affect the business heavily. Transportation by air, that's one thing we didn't do because you can't really transport oil through air. So using air international trade, using air for air transport for international trade is the quickest way to ensure product delivery and distribution. It's also the safest method of transport, and you can export and import a variety of goods through this mode. So for us, we never used air transport for oil. We always only ever did rail, road, or sea. A lot of you guys know about this already. The roads, a lot of um, people from India, a lot of students from India who want to come to Canada and start up a transportation business. And as good as it sounds on paper, it's actually the worst business to get into, especially here in North America, because it's such a saturated market. There's so many people doing it, and everyone's under trying to undercut each other, and they end up just going out of business because they're undercutting so much that they're operating in losses. So over here, just trying to be competitive in the trucking industry is extremely difficult. Road transport is more flexible. It's the most flexible. It is relatively easier to track your goods. It's easy to pay the fees, schedule the transport. Documentation's not not a lot. It's very easy. But If it's a long distance, then they're not time efficient because you got to pay the drivers and you have to pay wear and tear on your trucks, and there's a lot. And plus, if you're going to one location and you're coming back empty, that's a huge issue too, right? Some countries may have high toll fee charges, and the possibility of getting your goods damaged is high as well. Okay, because roads are just the least safe, right? Because you have so many other people driving on the road. The liability insurance is extremely high because if you have a high value product in there, you have to get high insurance to make sure if something happens to that product, you're insured for it. Transportation by rail. So it's the most environmentally friendly. Um, it's used often in continents like Europe where they have more money. Uh, as they do have inflexible schedules, and they are definitely the most delayed and have the most mechanical malfunctions. Not all regions all over the globe have a respectable rail system, which is a huge setback for remote regions. So rail cars were our biggest issue. We would love to sell in rail cars because we could put a lot more oil in the rail cars versus a truck, and so that would lower our cost of transport. But the only issue that we found was in the winter time when we would send these rail cars down to New York, Boston, um, uh, down to let's say like Chicago, um, New Hampshire. The issues that we were finding were in the winter time, the snow would build up and all the rail cars would get stuck. So we had all these 54 rail cars that were just not returning to us, that were empty, sitting in a rail yard somewhere in the U.S., and they weren't moving. So I would have to call up these rail companies all the time, say, guys, where the hell are my rail cars? I need them back because I need to send oil to my clients. So that was a huge issue that we used to go through. So intermodal transportation is the use of two or more modes or carriers to transport goods from shipper to consignee. Special standardized containers are used for intermodal transport of cargo on trucks, freights, trains, and ships. These containers are large rectangular boxes capable of being secured to special trailers. These durable steel containers are built so they can be transferred between different modes of transportation easily. This eliminates the risk of directly handling shipments. So if you're sending a, again, I'll go back to my example of what I did in real life. So what we used to do is there was something called a flexi tank. So a flexi tank is a inflatable um, plastic. It's a inflatable plastic bag. So we would hook up our hose to that plastic bag and fill the entire thing up with oil, lock it up, and it would be sitting in a 20-foot intermodal transportation container. Okay, so those 20-foot containers would be filled up with all this oil and then closed up, and then it would be picked. It would come in on a truck. That truck would drive it all the way to the port. The port crane would pick it up, put it on top of the ship that's going to China or going to Malaysia or wherever it's going. The ship would then sail to Malaysia. From there, the Malaysian port, they take the crane, put it on top of another truck. That truck would drive it down to wherever the location or the drop-off location is, and from there they would empty it and then send it all the way back to where the flexi tank actually came from. So very, very, very uh, uh, it's not actually not a very complicated situation, but because it's a smaller box and it needs different handling, right? Because you can't just you can't how are you going to move a 20-foot container from the plant to the ship, right? So it's different modes of transportation. That's what's intermodal transportation. When is intermodal transportation the best choice? So intermodal transportation is most suitable for intermediate and finished goods in loads of less than 25 tons. So like I said, um, our flexi tank would be in 20-foot containers and they would be roughly around 20 tons. The longer the distance a shipment needs to travel, the more likely it is that intermodal would be a good choice. Um, So freight moving more than 300 miles or longer than 1 day by truck are great candidates for intermodal transportation. Cargo with average values. So as long as the cargo is not very cheap or very expensive, intermodal transportation works. Um, High value products are usually sent with direct methods such as air cargo, and low value shipments travel either by rail or ocean. Intermodal transportation is a good selection when cargo flow needs to be continuous and in similar quantities. So if you're sending a bunch of those flexi tanks, those 20 metric ton flexi tanks that I was talking to you about, if you're sending them once every week, you want to go with intermodal transportation. You put them in those little things and you send them over. Um, if you're using, if you want to do, if they're buying the 50 million pound ton, or if they're buying the 50 metric tons or the 50,000 metric tons, then obviously you can't use intermodal. You have to use one of those big ships. Transport insurance. Obviously, you guys know in a nutshell what this means. It's an insurance policy that offers coverage on the insured property, right? So let's say I'm sending the oil, and there's a spillage or something that happens, and I have insurance. They're going to reimburse me for that. Like anything, coverage based on the value of goods. So if whatever you're sending is very expensive, you're going to be paying that extra. Covers any damage or loss on the goods due to mishandling, right? Examples of damage could include accidents, explosions, fires, theft, and malicious damage or theft, right? Very simple. Um, it's just like car insurance, guys, but it's transport insurance. Incoterms. When you're doing international trade or any type of trade, you need to know these Incoterms. Basically, it's a widely used term of sale, or recognized rules which define the responsibility of the sellers and buyers. Incoterms specifies who is responsible for paying for and managing the shipment, insurance, documentation, customs clearances, and other logistical activities. So there are 6 main ones that are most commonly used. So these are the 11 Incoterms, the 6 main ones that you guys should be most um, familiar with are FOB, EXW, DAP, CIF, CFR, and DDP. I'm posting a question on YouTube, and you guys need to, not a question, I'm posting a YouTube video that's gonna basically explain these 6, and I need you guys to answer the questions that I post. Okay, we're getting to week 10. E-commerce and international trade. So basically, e-commerce is the buying and selling of goods and services, or the transmitting of funds or data over an electronic network, primarily the internet. Guys, e-commerce is very simple. I'm not sure if you guys have taken e-commerce with me before. If you have, I've explained it before in my e-commerce class. It's anything to do, any business that you do with the use of the internet. Okay? So if you do any type of business with the use of the internet, that's called e-commerce. So even if you're doing customer support using the internet, that's e-commerce. If you're doing technical support, that's e-commerce. If you're doing, people are writing reviews on your computer, that's e-commerce. If people are buying stuff, they're checking your website, you have a website, that's all e-commerce. Marketing, e-commerce. Okay, so how does e-commerce affecting international trade? So e-commerce has significantly increased the efficiency of international trade. People all around the world are able to place orders, research products, contact customer support, email suppliers, and much more. Millions of firms are embracing e-commerce for their international trade needs. Very simple. What are some advantages? Low startup costs. Depend on the business, right? If you're a small business and you're shipping overseas and stuff, you can make a small little website costing maybe $500. It's pretty cheap. If you're a much bigger company and you're doing, depending on how big your company is, it could cost you a lot more. So um, it really depends on the type of business you are, but generally it's low startup cost. Potential for more income. If you're If you're online, then you have a lot more eyes and a lot more people able to access your website. So that's potential for more income. You sell internationally, so you're not just selling, you have a bigger target audience. Easily showcase your products online, so you can literally, like how Tesla's wanting to just sell all their cars online. They don't want to have any more showrooms. You can see all the stuff online. Um, Personalized online experience. So if you go on Amazon, they'll say, hey, you might also like this. Or as soon as you go on the home page, they'll have products that these are similar to products that you've bought before, like stuff like that. So you have personalized experience. And then easier to encourage impulse buys. So on Amazon, they'll have one-click buy. You'll see, right? You click one-click buy, and boom, you're able to buy whatever you want. So those are advantages. Disadvantages is if yours, like technology will always have issues. If your site crashes, that means no one's able to buy anything, which means no sales. Another disadvantage of e-commerce is people can't try on before they buy, which we all know. You buy something from Wish from China, it looks amazing on the site. As soon as it gets to you, it's a piece of crap. It's highly competitive. Too many people are doing it. Shipping times are lengthy, right? It takes time. If you're on Amazon, you want to buy something, it's coming from China, you know how long it's going to take, sometimes months. Physical retail is still more popular. If you walk into a Versace store or a Gucci store, or Louis Vuitton store, people are still willing to go in the store and buy the stuff versus buying it online. Common legal issues faced by e-commerce. Okay, so first one is incorporation problems. So if you're selling online and you're not incorporated, you will face legal issues. So if you're not an actual business, you're trying to sell things online, basically you're doing tax fraud because you're making money, you're not paying taxes. Trademark security problems. If you don't have your name and logo secured and trademarked, you could easily see it being reproduced and stolen. People can steal your intellectual property, and that can cost a lot for your business. Copyright issues. So let's just say you use content from other websites, they can sue you and get all the money. Transaction issues. You must meet all transaction laws of each country you are selling in, right? You have to, if you're doing transactions in different countries, overseas, all that, you have to meet their criteria. If you don't, you can get sued. And then privacy issues. Hackers will try and gain access of all your customers and their payment information. You see this, you hear this multiple times. Hackers are always trying to get, um, they're always trying to get paid, right? They're always trying to steal people's information and stuff like that. So you see that all the time. And finally, or actually not finally, EContract. An EContract or electronic contract is a legal document created and signed online. It is essentially a digital version of traditional paper contract. As with paper contracts, e-contracts are agreements signed by two parties. So basically, it's just a contract online. So you just sign it, which we've done. You and I have done. All of us have done plenty of times. We sign agreements and stuff online. That stuff happens all the time. Finally, what are some payment methods in e-commerce? So credit card payment is most widely and commonly used method. Some platforms that allow for safe credit card purchases online are PayPal, Stripe, Google Checkout, and Apple Pay. And that's it, guys. We'll see you in class.